Betsy, I want to start with you and the reporting that Monica was just talking about. How significant is this announcement politically, particularly when you do have some progressives who have said they wanted to see the president go farther?
The politics are really complicated. The NAACP put out a statement this afternoon lambasting this reported proposal, saying it doesn't go nearly far enough, saying the administration needs to do much more. Very, very critical, very straightforward about the position that that organization, which is obviously a key part of the Democratic Party's base, is taking on what reportedly Biden's team could be announcing as soon as tomorrow. And at the same time, there's also pushback from some economic advisors to the White House who worry that this move could actually increase inflation by increasing consumer spending. So it's understandable that it took Biden's team so long to get to this point. The benefits, of course, of student loan cancellation are obvious. A massive number of Americans stand to have their debt alleviated by this move. But it's not just as simple as that.
Crystal, what are you hearing?
Well, what I'm hearing is that folks want to know, as much in advance notice that they can about what the president's plans are. To get down to the wire where we are right now is really putting a lot of folks in limbo. I just paid off my student loans maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and so I understand what it feels like to not know if I have to pay another $800, a month payment, and not understand, where that next money is going to come from. So if we're thinking about how you account for your finances, inflation is high. There are a lot of things that people are feeling economic burdens from right now. People need to know in advance. I do think that, $10,000 is helpful. And we have to remember, this president has already canceled more student loan debt than any other president in U.S. history. So he has done something. But I do think that he can go further. He campaigned on this. He should deliver on his promise.
Doug, what do you think the reaction will be for Republicans on the trail? Again, we're talking about the timing of this, right? And it comes on the heels of the president. He's going to say he's had some legislative victories. How do Republicans take this and kind of redirect it to what they want to be talking about, which is inflation, the economy?
Well, it's easy for Republicans. Biden does something, therefore it's bad. And we know that's consistently on issues where they're going to campaign about. It's tougher with this type of an issue, But this allows them to pivot to inflation, which is their core message and should remain their core message for the next 3 weeks. And I think one of the things they may do, Washington behaves, since it's about student loans, Washington behaves like college students quite often. They don't study for the test until the day before. They don't write the paper until the day before. And what we see, and there's a Republican problem and a Democratic problem, but right now it's all a Democratic problem since that's Congress and this administration, is they're scheduling an event before they know what they're going to announce. They schedule a vote on a bill before we know what's in the bill, before the bill's been finalized. This is a Washington problem, but right now it's a Democratic problem, and it's part of why you're hearing Democratic heartburn.
Crystal, how do you expect Democrats to respond to that, particularly given that we are in this critical phase heading up to the midterms?
Well, again, I think Democrats will resoundingly say the president did something, and something is better than nothing. But I do think it's, it's incumbent upon us as party goers to push this president to do more. And so if he does not come out and announce a delay of, the repayment, I think that will be, bad for his politics. I think if he also doesn't deliver on this $10,000 minimum at least, that will leave people feeling like, should we have confidence in him going into November, which could absolutely affect the elections.
All right, let's talk about the elections because we've got some exciting races tonight. Betsy, one of the big ones that we are going to be watching is that special race in New York's 19th district. This is a House district where you have the Democrat, Pat Ryan, who's really trying to put the focus on abortion, and the Republican who, as Doug has said, is trying to keep the focus, Mark Molinaro, on inflation, on the economy, on rising crime. To what extent do you think this race could be a bellwether for November, and what will you be watching for?
It's hard to imagine a race that could possibly do any more to kind of crystallize the dynamics that are in play here. The only big difference, of course, between November is that in these special elections, turnout can sometimes be weirdly low, but there's a lot of money being spent on both sides. Republicans and Democrats both recognize that just from a messaging and from a base enthusiasm standpoint, whoever wins this race is going to win beyond New York's 19th district. And it really will show, it's just another test for Democrats of how much the issue of abortion access can counterbalance the potency of inflation as an issue for Republicans.
Doug, Sean Patrick Maloney was on Meet the Press this weekend, and he basically downplayed this race to Chuck. He said, look, we think the Republicans going to win, and then you have Republicans downplaying this as well. How confident do you think Republicans should be heading into tonight with this race? And do you think that too much is being made of it?
I think too much is being made of it, but not a whole lot too much is made of it. This is a significant race. We should pay attention to it, and it will give us more insights, more data, basically, on where voters are moving, how enthusiastic Democratic voters are, because the only subset of data that we really have is the Kansas vote. So we need more data for Republicans and Democrats to sort out, okay, what's the enthusiasm gap? Is there one? And so forth. But this is not necessarily, it's a Democratic district. It's sort of a swing district, but it's still a Democratic district. Democrats should hold on to this. If they don't, it's a big deal. If they win by a large margin, Democrats do. That's also significant.
Well, and Crystal, what's so interesting about tonight is that abortion is going to be featured so prominently in so many of these races, in the Florida gubernatorial primary as well. How much of a test is this about, because obviously we saw what happened in Kansas.
Right.
And we know that there, when it was a single issue, abortion was motivating to voters. But the question becomes, when it's on the ballot in this New York special race, when it's in the gubernatorial primary in Florida, how motivated will voters be in that context?
Yeah, well, Florida is a unique circumstance in that, it goes back and forth between the two parties. But what I think, we want to highlight is that we always say to candidates and to voters, really pay attention to the issue versus the person that's running. So this is an issue. It's at the forefront of many people's minds. And so there's a real, divide in America right now about how people feel about abortion access. And so if, the Democratic candidates are successful tonight, what it means, which is much of what Doug just stated, this is messaging that we can go into the November elections fighting stronger with, doubling down on why abortion access is a fundamental right for every woman in this country, and more Democrats will pick up that messaging moving forward.
And Betsy, we are in yet another week where former President Trump has been basically soaking up many of the headlines, if not most of the headlines. How much does that kind of reinforce for voters that there is this choice, not just of Democrats and President Biden, but this bifurcated choice between President Biden and former President Trump?
I think it certainly highlights the contrast, and there's upsides and downsides for Democrats. Remember, Biden just had one of arguably the most productive and successful weeks of his presidency, and the FBI managed to somehow create a little bit of a distraction by executing that search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. And now, of course, going into this primary night, we have still this constant stream of news related to the former president. It's very much almost irresistible instinct that Trump has to make as much news as humanly possible. And he doesn't like not being in headlines. The question for Democrats, of course, is that an issue because it distracts the public from topics they'd rather talk about? Or is it helpful because they don't have to do that much work to make a contrast or to argue that Trump is relevant to the future of politics?
It's also a question for Republicans, too. They'd rather be talking about inflation, rising crime, the situation at the border. So if they have to talk about Donald Trump past their primaries, they're off message.
Yeah. Crystal?
Well, I think it keeps, the former president in the news, and it also gives Democrats ammunition to remind, voters what this president has done. The January 6 hearings have already happened. So this is just another negative notch in former President Trump's belt.
But do you worry that, as Betsy says, it could overshadow some of that messaging as well?
I hope that it doesn't. I think, again, what we've seen relatively in the short term, anything that has been negative for Trump has been positive for Democrats. And so if they can continue messaging along those lines, it could mean wins where it might have been a shakeup in the race.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.